Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast, brought to you by NDIS Property Australia. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
Hello everybody, my name is Minh and I'm your host from NDIS Property Australia, and you're listening to the SDA Housing Podcast. Australia explains, highlights, guides and brings awareness about all things SDA in this ever-changing NDIS world. Today I'm doing a solo potty. It's been a while since I've done one. Today's topic is the anchor tenant. It's a word not often used, discussed openly in blogs and posts and marketing, because there's normally a topic raised by the SDA provider with the investor. And look, in the commercial office, commercial shopping world of commercial leases, the word anchor tenant is used much more frequently in that world there. But more so the last few years, the SDA world of leasing and tenancy has been very much discussions always centered around the anchor tenant. So what is the anchor tenant? In layman's terms, it's the first tenant moving to the house, okay? For SDA, the question you must be asking is, tell me more about anchor tenants in SDA homes. Well, an SDA, which provides housing for individuals with extreme functional impairment, it's a combination, be it one tenant, two tenants, or three tenants in a house. Several factors are relevant towards getting the anchor tenant and getting the right tenant as well, the right anchor tenant. The tenancy management by the SDA provider. So who you engage as an investor to manage your property. They should also be the ones who are procuring your participant as well. How they go about marketing and advertising and procuring the anchor tenant is very important. Because if you don't do it right, the vacancies could be quite long. And as an investor, you cannot afford to have a vacant property for long. I think I read somewhere this morning that 25% of properties are vacant out there in the marketplace across Australia. And that's probably more so because the first stage of acquiring the first tenant, the anchor tenant, is always a lengthy period. And that also depends upon when the providers first started working with the procurement process. And that procurement process would be networking with their SIL network, with support coordinators, the hospitals and aged care nursing homes, possibly. But also the participant community as well is very important for them to engage and talk to. So the brand reputation of who you engage as a SDA provider is very important in the process of getting the anchor tenant. But lo and behold, you might think, well, isn't the focus the SIL provider is who they should be focusing on? Well, no, the answer is not. The true source of participants comes from the support coordinator. So in theory, the investor relies upon the SDA provider to find someone. The SDA provider relies upon the SIL provider to find someone. The SIL provider relies upon the support coordinator to find someone. So the support coordinators are a very integral part of the process in finding the tenants and also the anchor tenant, because having them in place allows the anchor tenant to also bring in the on-site SIL provider into the house or the project site as well, if it's an apartment complex. So the benefits of having the anchor tenant, well, what are they? Well, stability. It gives stability to the investor of having regular income coming in. May not be the full tenant needed, but definitely is income coming in. It attracts also other tenants. So having the first anchor tenant in there will allow the provider to promote this built house, brand new, with one tenant already, looking for females, looking for males, or whatever it is, to ensure that the personality compatibility is in place as well to find the next tenants and to reduce vacancy risk. So with a head lease in place, a flow through head lease by the SDA provider from the NDIS to the provider to the investor, flow through. That's a legal agreement in place between the SDA provider with the head lease on the SDA to the SDA property to the owner, which removes the vacancy risk and ensuring consistent rental income. Usually, that first anchor tenant with their income coming in should pretty much cover most, if not all, of the Most, I think. Most of the mortgage payments on the house at the moment. Also, credibility. A known anchor tenant in the property will also bring credibility to the provider who's managing it and also the house itself, because it's not just an empty house. Because if it was empty, one must be wondering, well, why is it empty? Why has it been empty so long? Why is there even one tenant in the house? So we all know that having an anchor tenant is a good big tick overall for the success moving forwards for that property. What about the financial gains, the financial benefits of having, the anchor tenant? Well, it's obvious, isn't it? Steady, reliable income. The SDA house would offer stable income due to the NDIS funding. So the funding comes from the SDA income from the NDIS plus the MRRC. So it is with government-backed SDA funding. The investment risk is significantly reduced because there's a tenant in there. Remember, the time frame of the income coming in for the income is 20 years from whence the first anchor tenant goes in. Okay, higher rental yields. As we all know, SDA properties offer a higher rental yield than normal residential. The SDA income gross yields range from 10 to 20%, more so probably the low teens. And they generate gross income ranging from $50,000 to well over $100,000 a year, depending on the participant mix and the funding levels. A well-designed and well-located property could net at least $50,000 per year. That's with one tenant, the anchor tenant. Long-term tenancy. SDA housing involves long-term tenancy agreements because the residents have significant and ongoing needs for their specialised accommodation. So this will reduce tenant turnover and associated costs, such as vacancy periods and leasing fees, while providing property investors with greater certainty and low overall costs. The Australian government does support SDA housing through various incentives like the tax benefits and grants. Investors may be eligible for there will be eligible for tax deductions on construction costs and depreciation, obviously, and that's just normal taxation stuff, obviously. Reduced rate vacancy risk. So there is a high demand for this type of housing, SDA housing, and there is drastic undersupply in certain areas which are more costly to enter. With the lower price land or estates, then there's more oversupply, obviously, which we've covered in the past. If NDIS properties are left without a tenant, meaning a participant moves out of the home, this is whether it's the anchor tenant or any other tenants, the government will cover the rent for up to 60 days for houses with 2 or 3 rooms or participants or rooms, and up to 9 days for NDIS houses for 4 or 5 rooms. People with disability are generally long-term tenants, so they really want to stay for a long period of time, as long as possible, once they find a suitable house that suits their needs and their quality of life, which improves their quality of life. And this, in fact, should reduce tenant turnover by having a suitable house in the right area. Head leasing arrangements benefits. With the head lease in place, with the entity, that is an SDA Provider, whether it's a fixed head lease or it's rent guaranteed by the SDA Provider or flow-through lease, having a lease in place between the management company, which is the provider, and the investor is important part. Having a lease between the landlord and the tenant participant via the provider is also important. These providers charge between 10 and 15% per year, and that's just part of the whole process of getting the first tenant in. It's very important that the investor or you as an investor work with these SDA Provider who works with the SDA providers and support coordinators on sourcing tenants, finding tenants who are funded or not funded. If they are not funded, they should go through the S48 change of circumstances process, and if that doesn't come back to them in the outcome they want, they'll go via another S100 tribunal process to fight against that ruling there. How does one get the anchor tenant? I reckon you use a bit of common sense here. So don't give them 3 months rent free from the MRRC. So that MRRC is $13,000 a year. Comes from their, I think, a quarter of their pension and the Commonwealth Rent Assistance, about $13,000 a year. Maybe they charge 3 months of that. That's one carrot there. So a quarter savings there is $4,000 for a little bit over $4,000 savings for them not to worry about paying the first 3 months. That's one reason. That's one way to get them in. How about partially furnished or fully furnished house? That could also be a carrot incentives to bring them the first tenant in. Okay. What else can we do? Upgrades to furniture in the house to make it more suitable to the anchor tenant. Even putting in place, here's another idea, putting in place not just the provisions for hoists and automation, but actual installation up front. So most investors, they actually have the HPS house built with provisions for hoist, provisions for automation. Why the provisions? Because the NDIS does pay for that installation once the participant is selected and applied for and are moving into the house. So that will cause some delay of installation, maybe a month to 2 months, I think. So that's also a little delay that people don't really realize. So maybe an idea could be the investor yourself absorbing that cost up front and actually installing it from at day one completion. Having it there from day one rather than having a participant wait for a month to 2 months of funding approvals and installation could mean your ability to bring them in straight away for tenancy immediately rather than waiting a month or two. Okay, so that's also another idea to bring the anchor tenant in. So as I've explained to you today, there's various ideas and there's reasons why the anchor tenant is very important. But I think most importantly, having the anchor tenant is very vital to the value of the property, right? I was having a meeting today with Debbie and some of the girls in the office here, and we were talking about our SDA Housing Assist service internally for investors who have empty houses. And we're talking about doing the basic stuff like professional photography and professional video fly-throughs. And Debbie was saying that there's so much pushback on investors on even doing that. And I'm thinking to myself, why? We're talking about $400, $500, $600 here. If you're doing that photography and videos, probably $600, $700. So drone footage of the house, videos of the community, of the house, going around inside all the rooms, just showing a visual video for 2-3 minutes, edited to 2-3 minutes, is showing potential families and support coordinators and providers and participants the actual finish of the house, the actual layout of the house. I mean, that alone, engaging a professional photographer and videographer, which may cost $500, $600, $700, that action alone is going to bring in participant inquiries for inspections. And from inspections, you get the anchor tenant. So it surprises me so much that people don't even think outside the square or think of common sense here that, unlike other normal tenants who line up in a big line to go into houses to look at, to inspect, to apply for tenancies, for rentals, participants are different. They got their support coordinators, their OTs. The OTs also have to come to inspect as well. Occupational therapists, OTs, the providers, maybe the support coordinator in the family and the participant. 3 to 5 different individuals are coming along on that day or over several days to inspect the house in order for the anchor tenant to come in. Okay? So again, having a visual video or photo does help immensely in getting that first tenant in. And the first tenant is very, very vital. So again, ladies and gentlemen, don't be a Scrooge. Spend that money. You've already spent $800, $900 to $1 million already on the house, plus holding costs so far. You're paying $5,000-$6,000 a month in mortgage payments on an empty house. Please do the right thing. Engage the provider. Ask them for their strategy, how they're doing the marketing. If they have bad reviews on Google and they just charge you $3,000-$4,000 and do nothing, then that's probably a sign to step away and walk away from them. But you want to hear their story, Who are they? What's the background? What's their numbers? What are they managing? What areas are they doing it in? What's their penetration in that community for sourcing participants as anchor tenants or tenants overall? So you want to suss out the SDA provider for one, but two, you want to ensure that there's a game plan here, right? And if they never ever ask the question, do you do photography? Do you have connections to do photography? I want this to look beautiful and sexy and promote it as a lovely house in this area for tenancy, photography and videography. And again, it did surprise me that so many people don't actually do it that way. The investors don't want to spend the $500. It's a bit silly to me, But anyway, back to the point at hand. The point of the discussion here today is the anchor tenant. I hope that my 15 or 17 minutes thus far has given you a bit of insight as to how we think as their consultants, okay? We're not providers, no. We're consultants who do advisory, consultation and sales and marketing, true. But we've done this for the last 4.5 years now, and we've seen the good, the bad and the ugly with regards to SDAs and whatnot. And I really hope that you all can appreciate the content of today, being anchor tenant, being so important, getting the first one in. And they always say the first one's always the hardest, but the second one should be easy, and the third one is hopefully a blessing, a bonus. So please take some notes from today, and I hope you all have a great day, and looking forward to come back to you soon with some more topics in the next few weeks as well. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed and following us so you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this podcast with those that could benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.